welcome in. Thank you so much for clicking on this video. I know it's been a long time since I've done an interview, but I'm joined today by Jake, who's actually one of my students learning Shakuhachi, but he also happens to be living in China. He plays a bunch of instruments, as you can see in the background. He has his Shakuhachi hanging up there. He's got a bunch of Xiaos. He's got a guqin, and then he's got is it called a handpan? Is that what they're called?
Yeah, this is the handpan, yeah.
Yeah, handpan. Bongo drums. Didn't even know you played bongo drums too. But
that was a gift. I'm just surrounded by them in here. This is my favorite room.
Favorite room. I understand that. It's definitely it's your man cave, and this is my man cave. I have a bunch of flutes offside the screen there. So before we get started, can you give us a little introduction about what you do and some of the work you're doing in China, the school that you're teaching at, as well as some of the things you're doing on YouTube?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, like you said, my name is Jake. I am currently living in Wudang, China. I'm here studying martial arts. I've actually been here for about 11, almost 12 years now. And I first came here to Wudang to study Taoist martial arts, Taiji, Qigong, Kung Fu as well. And while here now, I am a 16th generation disciple of my lineage, which is the Sangfengpai lineage. And now I'm a teacher. I'm teaching classes here in Chinese and English. I also have some programs online that I teach students abroad. And yeah, lately I've been getting into my passion of music, learning the dongxiao. I have a guqin. I don't know if you can see that one on there.
Yeah, we can see that one.
Yeah. And of course, learning the shakuhachi with you. That's been one of my favorite things, just music in general, for a long time. So being here, being able to practice is really awesome.
That's so awesome. And actually the guqin is one of the instruments that I've always wanted to learn. But you know, I can't add anything more. I'm already so busy, but that's in the future. Guqin is definitely on my list of things.
When you're ready, you know.
All right. Well, we'll be trading lessons at that point then.
Yeah, hopefully. I got a long way to go, but yeah.
So can you tell me a little bit more about the YouTube channels and things? You have multiple YouTube channels and even a podcast that you're doing right now.
Yeah, actually, if people ever watched it, this is actually my little mini studio, but I have a few programs. Right now, my main channel is called The Ways of Wudang. So my idea is to spread what I've learned here, and that includes the art, that includes the martial arts, that includes the philosophy. And so I've created The Ways of Wudang as my kind of main flagship, and that's 3 pieces. One being Wudang Way, which is martial arts training, tutorials, information on that. The second being Tea Talks, which is the podcast in video and audio format. Tea Talks Unfiltered, that's like a philosophy discussion, story sharing, kind of a nostalgic episode for me. It's very nice. And then there's also a weekly music, which is the art. So there's something for your body, something for your mind, something for your spirit. And on the music channel, that's Wudao music, and that's all about the Xiao right now. Maybe in the future some Shakuhachi stuff, but still got a long way to practice. Yeah.
So all those links can be found in the description below, but don't go there yet. Go there after the video. Make sure you watch the full thing, and then we'll get you over there. I wanted you on today because I couldn't think of. I had a bunch of people ask me, when are you going to make a video on the differences between the Shakuhachi and like the dongxiao? And I go, well, I would love to make that video, but I don't know anything about it. Then, you know, some months later, you started taking lessons with me, and now we've been taking lessons for probably over a year now, right? It's been quite.
Yeah, a year and 3 months, something like that.
3 months. So I thought that because I have you as a student and you're doing so much amazing work online as well as YouTube, I thought I would send you a couple subscribers, as well as actually finally answer these questions from my subscribers when I couldn't have answered this. So what is a dongxiao?
So a dongxiao literally just means a hold flute. There are a couple of different versions. Normally we refer to it as the Xiao. I only have a dongxiao, and in this one I have a qinxiao, which is the same thing but it's smaller, and it's played with the guqin. There's also a nan-xiao, which is the northern version, which is probably a little bit more similar in sound to a shakuhachi. And based on the history, this is kind of like another, how would you say, another child of the ancient flutes, right? Because the modern flute now has, this one has 8 holes. So you've got 7 on the front and 1 on the back. So it makes it a lot easier to play. It's a pretty good universal flute to play all sorts of different music. But yeah, dongxiao literally just means a hold flute.
Oh, okay.
So this is also vertically played. There is also a dizi, which is horizontally played, which I have right there.
Nice. Okay, so I noticed that on that one you're holding, it actually has a root end on it.
Yeah, so some of them, the better quality ones will still have the root end, and this one's been sanded a little bit. This one's my favorite right now. This is an F key dongxiao, but it's got really small cutouts, so I would refer to it as a qinxiao because the sound is very soft, so you can play it with the guqin without overbearing the sound of this instrument. And some of them do have roots. Some of them are sectional, 2 or 3 pieces, but you get all different shapes and sizes, different keys, also very similar.
Now, with the older versions, would they just have less holes, like 6 holes, 5 holes? What would be the...
Yeah, the typical, like the older style ones are 6 or 5.
6 or 5.
When I was doing some history, like looking into the Xiao, when I was first making videos and things like that, I was learning about it, and they've been made from everything. It's a really old instrument. Like, I think the oldest one, I saw it in Wuhan in the museum, actually. They have like bird bone, they have jade, they have all sorts of different things, and some of them are tiny. You know, they've kind of evolved over the years, and in the last, I think it was in Tang Dynasty, or no, it was after Tang Dynasty, it's pretty recent, that the 8-hole became the standard because it's so much easier to play half notes, change tuning, things like that. You don't have to do half holes, basically.
And for the people who don't know, when was the Tang Dynasty? About what years?
You're putting me on the spot. I think it's the... I'm really bad at history.
I think was
like 1600 or something. Is it? No, it's way earlier than that.
Yeah, I thought it was 500 to 700 or something like that.
I might just remembering a 6, and that's all I can remember.
I can look it up really quickly. Tang Dynasty years.
Yeah, because I am not... Don't remember all the history.
690 to 705.
Oh, 690. Okay, that's what I was remembering.
It goes all the way... Yeah, okay, so it's 618 to 907.
I got a 6. That's as close as I can get.
there was a 6 in there. I'll give you that one.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like we used to have that in conservatory. They'd be like, "What year was this composer born?" And I go, "I don't know, but I'll tell you every piece he wrote." I mean, I don't know that much. He only wrote 25.
I know it was before. That's my history lesson.
It's not right now.
Yeah. I think.
Yeah. So, and so from your experience learning the Shakuhachi and learning the Xiao, what would you say are the key differences between the two?
I mean, definitely just the way you play is entirely different. The approach to music is totally different as well. Even though they have like maybe a similar root historically, they've divided so much in that the music, the way it's played, is completely different. The culture around each one is different. Also, just the sound hole. The embouchure. So these ones are either closed and much more small opening. So you don't get as much like, how would you say, like range of sound out of the Xiao as you do with the Shakuhachi. That's one of the like dynamics that I really like about the Shakuhachi. With Xiao, there's some traditional pieces that have that same flavor, but it's more pristine, it's more pure. It's not as wild as say the Shakuhachi is.
Now, do you guys employ any sort of like medikari technique?
Not really. Like now playing Shakuhachi, it's starting to influence my Xiao playing because I'll find myself like moving my head around while I'm playing Xiao. And I talk with my guqin teacher here. He's also learning in China, and he says that a lot of people, once they start learning Shakuhachi, they stop playing Xiao because the way you make sound is so different. And to really progress with the Shakuhachi, it's an entirely different approach.
Now, has your teacher mentioned anything about the connection or the historical relationship between the zhiba and the dongxiao?
So that's where the nanxiao comes into play, and historically it was always that an older version of the nanxiao kind of was a derivative that evolved into the Shakuhachi, and there's some kind of where it was kind of started in China with the Xiao version, but then that particular style went to Japan and kind of evolved from there. But the specifics of it, I haven't really gotten much direct answers. It's more just like they have the place in China, the original temple, which is now just like a I think there's a stone landmark there. I think you know about this more than I would.
Is this in Hangzhou or Hangzhou?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's kind of like the marking place, and they still have some information there about it, but the temple is no longer there. So that would be kind of the place where they branched apart, and from there really evolved into entirely different instruments, I feel.
Yeah, and actually, even if we look at the Gagaku Shakuhachi, it is remarkably different than the current
Oh,
shakuhachi
really?
we have today. It's much smaller. It has an additional hole. There, it's a 6-hole flute, and yeah, it doesn't have a root end either. So it sounds and its sound is much different. It's higher pitched. It's very soft. From the recordings that I've heard, there was one person who was allowed to play the one of the old Gagaku shakuhachis from the Heian period, which is 900 to 1258, something like that. And so that guy played it, and it was definitely like, okay, yeah, this is an old sound. Like, this is an older flute that's been weathered, and you can hear that sort of quality. But it's not like the full bodied powered shakuhachi like we use today, or even the Edo shakuhachi, I would say, is much louder. It has much different sound quality due to that root end and the flute just being so much longer than those from the Heian period.
Yeah, I find that to be like a really common thread. Even now, I got some comments recently. People ask me like, "Why is the Xiao so big? Like, why does it have to be so much longer than the fingering holes?" Because they end here, and then you've got an extra 30 centimeters, sometimes more, at the end. And I think that's just like, I went to the museum in Wuhan and saw some of the old panxiao, which are the ones that you blow downward into, like like the North American Indian flute.
Oh,
And
the pan flutes, yeah.
yeah, the pan flutes, and it's just called pan xiao. And like seeing that, and then seeing the original xiao, seeing the original guqin, they're all like miniature. They're all tiny, and everything's gotten bigger and more developed. And I think that has to do partly with the quality, the care, and also just the way they make instruments. I think it improves, and so they adapt and create bigger sounds. And also, you think about orchestra music, that changes the instrument.
Yeah.
How you play together with other people, I think that comes into play.
Yeah, it definitely. Same thing with the shakuhachi. The instrument has gotten bigger and louder over time, especially when you play like so I have an Edo flute that's from the 1700s, and playing that right next to my modern flute. I mean, they're completely different instruments in my opinion because of how different the sound is. The range on the modern shakuhachi, I'm guessing the range on the modern xiao is much greater than that of one 1,000 years ago.
Yeah. There's something to be said for some flutes that stand the test of time and they get better with age. I know you know that as well, but yeah, the sound volume is totally different.
So can you give us a sound sample of your xiao?
All right, we'll give it a shot. Yeah, totally different.
It is very cold, both here and there right now. So
So yeah, so we have like.
oh, and we just had our shakuhachi lesson too. So now you get the embouchure. You're like,
well,
how
that's the thing. I'm shifting back and forth all the time, and from going to this like chinxiao type style, it's so much smaller. It's such a more fine embouchure than the shakuhachi, where you can just kind of like blow however you want. It feels. So yeah, try something. Really short.
Yeah. Okay. So I noticed a lot there already, and so when you start the tone, are you tonguing?
I probably am because it's like my old habit of shifting, and with this song specifically, there are some. It's called Wudang Way. It means vain longing, and so it does have some. Like it starts off pretty quiet, and I feel like I like these kind of songs because they have that kind of like that very soft tone to start off with. But then there is a little bit of tonguing in it as well.
Okay, so that's one point I find that might be a little bit different for us, that we don't usually use tonguing for shakuhachi playing. There are a couple techniques that require a sort of tonguing, but most of the time we're doing hole poppings, which I also saw you do as well.
Right.
And so and that's probably more typical of opening and closing holes.
Yeah, there's quite a lot of similar techniques. Like you have your lifting, you have your taps, you have your like the huaing, the slow glissando, like the lifting off, and things like that. A lot of similar techniques, but yeah, when you get into head rotations and even tonguing, I think that's probably frowned upon by like professional players. But it's a leftover from the Dizi, which is like purely tonguing. They'll do like single, double, circular breathing, tonguing, things like that. Like they do lots of it. So it is more common with the Xiao and the Dizi for sure.
Ah, interesting. What would you say is the most different thing from Xiao to Shakuhachi? Because I think the listeners, if at least for my subscribers who have heard me play, you guys can hear that the tonal difference of the modern Xiao and the modern Shakuhachi. It's much warmer. It's not so abrasive and brassy on the end. Do you have like a brassier end, or is it more just that like kind of smooth sailing sound?
Yeah, I think it's more just like the Xiao has developed to be such a how is the kind of analogy that I read about early on was that it is the sound of the phoenix. So it's supposed to have these like very pure kind of clean tones that are almost not really high, but kind of that kind of up in the heavens type sound. And I like that analogy because that kind of speaks to the way the Xiao is crafted. Like everything is meant to be straightened. So even with this one, there's a few imperfections, but everything is straightened out. There's kind of a standard of having 9 sections and having like the slow length increasing throughout the entire flute. So you have a really standard even tone throughout. And so there's a lot of that. And with this one specifically, it is a lot softer than is typical. You can get a pretty loud sound, but I think that kind of brassy difference is definitely more apparent, especially with Shakuhachi. You have more like the jinashi, like you have like things that are really left and just natural. I think that changes the sound too. Do you think so too?
Oh, absolutely. So the jinashis are not going to be as loud, and they're going to be warmer. I think that they're more resonant in a way that's different than the Giadi flutes. So Giadi flutes are going to have more core. Like the middle of the note is going to be a lot more defined, but the jinashi is going to have a lot more tonal range with its timbres and different kind of fluctuations. And sometimes the oddities in the flute are actually what make it so appealing and so fun to listen to, because on this one note just has such a character about it. Actually, that's an interesting question. Do you guys use any sort of lacquer or paste on the inside of the flute?
I think that's starting to get more common, especially with like the nanxiao, with the southern flute. I was saying northern earlier, and I meant to say southern. Nanxiao is southern flute. There are some that are painted on the inside and do have some kind of lacquer, but these are all untreated on the inside. That's yeah. Okay. But for some of the wider, because nanxiao is also a lot bigger. It's also a lot thicker. This is pretty small in diameter comparatively. Yeah.
It's very interesting. Okay, now let's go over your top favorite things about the Xiao. What are the things that really just make you go, this is why I love this instrument?
I mean, this is definitely my first wind instrument. I was never really interested in them before. I was always a string instrument, or maybe drums, if you can't tell. And so Xiao got me into wind instruments first. It's the first bamboo flute that I found. And really liked. Like there was the Dizi, but that's such a high pitched, very high energy, and I like the Xiao because it has that kind of meditative, quiet, kind of serene, individual playing type sound, which I think is what opened the door for Shakuhachi for me as well. Yeah, because all the things I love about the Xiao are like overexpressed in the Shakuhachi. Yeah, they're similar in that sense.
The thing that I think shocked me most about the Shakuhachi was not only just the dynamic and the timbral range of the instrument, but the actual fact that it can play 3 octaves as well. That really blew my mind. Now, what about the Xiao? Do you guys have 2 or 3 octaves?
Same thing. We have low, middle, and high. So it does have a really big range, which makes it really easy to play a large amount of music for sure.
So currently you're in China right now. Which part are you in?
I'm in Wudang Mountains, which is in Hubei province.
Hubei province, okay. And so how you've been there for a long time now. Did you have any problems, like culture shock things that would happen, or can you tell us a little bit about how it's been adjusting to that culture and assimilating yourself to it?
I mean, yeah, I first came here in 2010, and I was just turned 20 years old. First time leaving the country, first time traveling by myself. So that was pretty big already. And I think that kind of lessened the impact of an entirely new culture because
Mm-hmm.
just being on my own was new. Everything was
Mm-hmm.
new. But yeah, there definitely were like culture shock moments, but I think that for me, all the experiences were pretty positive.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Life here, I'm from the Midwest in America. So like
Yes.
very traditional in some sense already,
Mm-hmm.
very close to your family, very
Mm-hmm.
connected to your community, in this
Mm-hmm.
sense from a very small town even. So coming to Wudang, coming here, it has a very similar vibe actually, and everyone's really welcoming. People were pretty well initiated to foreigners because of the kung fu schools here.
Mm-hmm.
So there was always kind of a good relationship with everybody, even if you couldn't speak the language.
Mm.
And as I learned the language and got to know everyone around, the connection just deepened. And so I joke, but this is a really true story. I left home at 20 years old for the first time, and then I came here with the plan of staying for 5 years for a traditional program, learning martial arts.
Mm-hmm.
And I had to return after 6 months to renew my visa. We have to return every once in a while.
Yeah.
And it was harder to leave here after 6 months than it was to leave my home for the first time after 20 years.
And I really
You know?
understand that. I really
Yeah.
understand that as well. The first time I came to Japan, it was the same sort of feeling. Even through all like the mistakes that I made through whether it be language wise or doing some sort of thing that's considered to be extremely taboo, and having an OG-san
Yeah.
yell at me on the train for doing something. All right, so what was your biggest mistake? What was the most embarrassing language
Oh
mistake?
no. Oh no. All right. Put me on the line, and I've got a really good one, and I don't really want to say it, but it's the only one I can think of. So,
There we
um,
go. If it's juicy, it's good.
when I first came, well, not when I first came, I had actually been here for about a year, and
Mm-hmm.
I started dating this girl who's now my wife,
Mm-hmm.
and we had been dating for a few months, and I thought it'd be funny because here the tradition during birthdays is to give red bags full of money.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't realize, like, I was like, oh, this will be funny. Like, we're not, I know the tradition, but it's not something we do all the time. But I was like, I'll be really clever. And I saw this store that has all this fake money. And I said, I'll go buy a bunch of fake money and then I'll give that to her for her birthday in a huge red bag. And I thought I was like really, really clever and it'll be funny and they'll be like, ah, ha, ha. And then I gave her the money. Luckily, I did it in private as just like an inside joke because I gave her funeral paper money.
Oh
And
no. Oh.
I crossed cultural lines because I didn't realize I didn't know the whole tradition
Mm-hmm.
about that yet because I was still learning the language at the time. And yeah, that was pretty big. And she's like, oh, she laughed and she was like, don't do this ever again.
Don't ever.
Yeah.
I've
I
heard
still
that.
remember that.
Yeah, I've heard that like there's a lot of foreigner guys when they come to Japan and they'll buy flowers for their date and they're trying to
Mhm.
show like American chivalry. And so then they do that and then the woman gets them and goes, "These are for dead people."
Yeah,
And so
exactly.
like when you go into the grocery store, people say, "Oh, they have flowers for sale," just like in America. And like they mix the roses and like the butsudan, like any of like the altar or
Oh,
they mix all of that together. So if you're not familiar with it or if you can't read the characters on there, where it would say like flowers for the gravesite or flowers for the altar, and then you give that to somebody, they'll kind of be a little bit shocked, to
yeah,
say the
yeah, yeah.
least, because it's almost like saying like I like you, but why don't you just die already?
Yeah, it's like giving. I used to wear a red beanie all the time when I first came here, and wearing green hats is a sign of promiscuity, or like having an affair. And I was like, well, I should stop wearing this hat probably.
Well, I didn't know that. Oh, that's
Yeah,
interesting.
yeah.
Uh,
There's some little things like that come up, which, are they were never a big deal because everyone gives you some credit, for trying,
yeah, we have
which is
so
really nice.
what I call it in Japan is I call it the gaijin pass. So
Yeah, yeah.
it's like
Same thing about my past, yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So you get there's so many there's a certain you can look at the Venn diagram of things like Japanese people do it. It's they won't let it pass, and there's foreigners, if they do it, they'll get a pass. And usually it's usually the same list. And then there's the one in the middle where everybody will be held to the same standard.
True.
And so I want to ask you about, on the train, phones, yes or no?
Yes, unfortunately.
Okay. Not in Japan. Yeah, in Japan it's not. So okay. I was wondering about that, if that was also the same thing there as well.
I read recently about the whole there was a student who came here, and she's a foreigner who lives in Japan, and she posted something about how she was like listening to a podcast and her headphones broke, and like immediately everyone started like there's a big social etiquette about that, and I was like dreaming about it, and I was like, oh, I wish everyone had headphones.
Yeah, it's they're very, very strict about it here, and I got yelled at once, and then it never happened again. So all it needed was one time for someone to tell me. Okay, so speaking of clothing and speaking of hats, what is the hat that you're wearing? You have a hair design that's mixed, and then what is the clothing that you're wearing as well?
So this is actually the Taoist traditional top knot, and so this is like the standard hairstyle for Taoism for the monks and also for the martial arts practitioners here. This is just handmade kind of robes, no special like meaning behind the color or anything like that. For us, it's very casual because we're mostly focused on the martial arts and the health cultivation practices. These aren't like ritual robes or anything like that. Just tailor-made for comfort.
Comfort.
This is pretty representative of kind of the Taoist philosophy, the balance of Taiji. It's supposed to actually represent a cow's nose with a pin through it. And so the idea is Lao Tzu, which is riding this tiger, but you can't see him. The author of the Tao Te Ching. He leads his bull, his water ox, throughout China, and the representation is that you're leading the energy of the body up to the Baihui, the 100 convergence acupressure point at the top of the skull, at the top of the crown of the head, and that's kind of like the idea that we're trying to cultivate our energy to connect to something.
That's interesting.
And it's also very, very comfortable for training because we all have long hair, because Taoist philosophy practices following what is natural, and so we don't cut our hair, we let it grow out, and so it's also kind of a function thing, more or less.
Absolutely. Now, and you don't wear any other types of clothes. You've told me before this is basically your outwear. What is the reaction from people when you're in public?
Here it's fine. I'm definitely well known at this point for like that guy. So
yeah, I know that too.
I've been here long enough that they know, and a lot of people know me by name or follow me online or something. So there's never been any kind of clash with culture there. There is more so if you go to other cities, because I still end up wearing the same thing. Like you said, it's all I have at this point. Really, it is. I think I have like one hoodie. Otherwise, it's just robes and these kind of clothes. But no, for the most part, everyone's pretty welcoming, and they know, like, they see me like, oh, you practice Taiji, and I'm like, oh yeah, sure, yeah. Cool.
And so you do a lot of stuff on TV as well, and you have a lot of different programs that you're doing. I have to do the same thing as here in Japan, and I get stopped a lot by a lot of the older men, and they look at me and they go, not on TV. Not on TV. Do you get any of those sort of reactions where you'll have people who do recognize you, and they want to come and talk to you?
Definitely now. Like with the promotion of social media today, is so big that I'm on YouTube and like Facebook and things like that, but it's nothing compared to the following in the Chinese social media for Douyin, the TikTok here. Bilibili, Bijan, Toutiao, Kuaishou, all these different ones. I think on each one we have like, my wife helps me manage it, and I think each one is like over 200,000 on each one.
That's unbelievable.
And yeah, most of the people they're really interested in like the daily life, like what I do as a Sanfang Pai disciple, but also just what it's like being a foreigner. So like this conversation I have quite often. Actually, just earlier today, there was a video documentary that was released finally. It's only like 5 minutes, but there's another one planned for next month. They're pretty common, actually.
That's wonderful.
Yeah.
So you're teaching dongxiao, you're teaching kung fu. Where can people follow you?
So yeah, you can follow me really easily, probably just by going to thewaysofwudang.com. That's my main website, and it's got links to everything. But on YouTube, you can either find martial arts at Wudang Way, you can find Tea Talks at Tea Talks Unfiltered, or you can find music at Wudao Music.
All right, fantastic. So I'll post one of the videos at the end of this one, so they can, if you stay all the way to the end, you can hear that. And I'll put one of the routines from the Kung Fu as well, and kind of put them together so people can get a flavor without trying to dig through YouTube and finding one.
True. Yeah.
Anything else you'd like to have my audience members know about the difference between dongxiao and shakuhachi, or just anything in general?
No, I mean, I'd say they're both really great instruments. I think that they're similar enough that you're gonna fall in love with either one or both, and they can only make your life more musical. And if anyone's listening to this and you're not a follower of Sean already, and in the Discord studio, for sure join that, because for me, I learned Xiao by myself for a very long time. And that's kind of why I'm promoting the videos now, is being able to put more information out there, because it was very hard to learn with English resources. There was almost nothing. And for you, there is no better source for Shakuhachi. And so, like, I highly recommend both of our channels.
Yeah.
but yours even more so, because there's so much more to offer for history, for making. Yeah, it's been really great this last year, because Shakuhachi has definitely impacted and improved, I hope, my Xiao playing.
Yeah, and even in the Discord server as well, we have other professional shakuhachi players that come in and comment and teach us stuff about the historical aspects of shakuhachi. And I try to do my best to post a lot of links and resources as well that otherwise, you're not going to find from a quick Google search.
It's tough.
Yeah, you got to do a lot of digging to even find stuff. Even just find the research papers as well. They can take some time to find.
And that does add a lot of value to your playing, because it helps you understand the context. And
Absolutely.
For sure.
Well, Jake, thank you so much, and thank you everybody who stayed around and watched this video. Maybe there'll be more interviews in the future. If there's other instruments that you guys are interested in doing a compare and contrast with, comparing it to shakuhachi, just write it in the comments below. In the meantime, make sure you go over to all of Jake's YouTube channels, and make sure you give a like and a subscribe, and also don't forget to hit the notification bell. That does actually make a difference. So until next time, Jake, thank you so much for joining.
Thank you.